1. I moved to a new apartment at the beginning of last month. It has only one room besides the bathroom and the kitchen, and had all the furniture already inside. The view from the balcony is stunning. However, there is also a graveyard of this small village I moved to, and it's around the corner. I can actually see it from my kitchen window if I stand on my toes. I already went there once because it happened to be on the way of a walk I was taking with my boyfriend. The graveyard looked very beautiful and well taken care of, with some noble graves and a very small church in the middle. It has no locks on the gates, so people can visit it 24/7 whenever they feel like it. The thing that already kind of bothered me was the fact that the gates made a really annoying noise, like they needed to be oiled or something. After we got back from our walk, we never went back to it, but we kept talking about it. At the time we were there, I didn't really notice it, but my boyfriend was really nervous, and also seemed kind of scared. But I was just so into walking around looking at the graves that I didn't really notice. It was only a few days ago that he got really upset when he saw the grave of a girl who passed away this year in March, at only 5 years old. Looking at him, you wouldn't really expect him to get upset by a grave. I talked about that with him for a while until we changed the subject and he eventually drove home. That was 2 weeks ago. Fast forward to yesterday. I woke up pretty late because yesterday I was staying up late doing the laundry and sorting my clothes, as I need to get rid of some of them. I know for a fact that I cleaned the apartment to its peak, so there was no possibility of garbage or dishes to be cleaned up or anything when I came back. So I came home yesterday at around 9 p.m., only to walk into my living room to discover a puddle. For a second I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, and that maybe it was the floor reflecting the light from the lantern outside my window, but no. I touched it, I smelled it, it was clearly water. When I looked up to the ceiling, it looked as normal, so it was dry, no leak or anything. I just brushed that off, thinking maybe I just forgot to clean the floor completely because I've left the house in a hurry earlier. I was very tired yesterday, but just couldn't seem to fall asleep. I was restless and felt as if it would just be wrong to sleep now. So I got dressed again and took a walk, stopped by the graveyard and sat on a bench in front of the gates for a while. I remember being so tired that my legs felt like they were pulsating. After a while I went back home. No puddle. Everything as before. As per habit, I always lock my door twice at night. Last night, as I wanted to lay down to sleep, I heard something playing around with my door. It was 2 a.m. and I froze under my blanket. I knew for a fact that there couldn't be anyone, since my landlord, who lives in the apartment below, has been asleep at that time, and the door to enter the house itself is also always locked at night. I heard how something or someone was trying to turn my doorknob, and got more aggressive every minute. Even though it's the middle of August, I felt as if I was in a freezer because I became so cold. I could hear my door shaking. The doorknob was probably about to fall out at that point, and then it stopped. Slowly, but it somehow did. Not much later, I hear quiet crying and mumbling. I could finally move again and sneak to my door, which gave me a creepy vibe. I slowly sat down near the door, still hearing the crying and listening very closely. Then I heard someone whisper, "Mommy, please let me in. I'm scared in the dark." At this point, I almost shat my pants, grabbed my phone, which I took with me, and called my boyfriend. The crying stopped at the very moment I dialed his number. When he picked up, I slowly crawled back into the living room before I finally started talking to him. "Somebody please tell me how I'm supposed to sleep tonight." Update. I'm at work right now and can't get this off of my mind. Sunday night, something in the apartment above me fell over, something heavy. Nobody lives up there. It was a very loud thud sound, and I was on a video call with my boyfriend. I was so stressed that I started crying hysterically. Now you may think I'm a crybaby, but for a better understanding of my reaction, I felt stressed the whole time since I entered my apartment. I felt as if someone was in my hallway watching me. and I can't sleep without lights anymore. I keep hearing whispers and crying from above, sometimes from my door's direction, sometimes from the graveyard. When it comes from the graveyard, it seems to be especially intense, and it sounds especially hurt. I don't know what this thing might be and what it wants from me. My boyfriend keeps telling me that it's the wind, or that some rat in the apartment above kicked something over. I keep having very gory and disturbing dreams, mostly of having my eyes injured, and I almost have to throw up from these dreams. I keep getting headaches whenever I glance over to the graveyard. I don't know what will happen next, but I'm scared to go home today. There were also strange noises coming from the basement last night when I came home from a walk. My neighbors weren't home at the time. I keep hearing a little girl calling me Mom or Mommy. I'm 21. I live alone. I do not have a kid. 2. Okay, so my parents live on an old farmhouse that used to be a tavern in the 16th century. My room is in the new part of it that was built 60 years ago, but when my door is open I can see the stairs that lead to the older part of the house that's around 500 years old. The doorway at the top of the stairs has always freaked me out. When I was a kid, about 4 or 5, I woke up in the middle of the night and had to go to the toilet. I got up and walked up to the staircase. My room is on the 2nd floor, and the scary hallway is in the 3rd floor. Toilet was in the 1st floor back then. I've never been afraid of the dark, so I didn't turn the lights on, and I could somewhat see where they were. I was ready to go down the stairs, but I turned my head and saw a black figure standing at the 3rd floor doorway. It started moving towards me, and I ran back to my room. That's all I can remember from that, and I kind of made myself believe that it was just a nightmare. Anyway, years pass. I've never seen anything after that in my parents' house, but I've had strong feelings that someone is watching me, and sometimes following me around the house. That I thought was anxiety playing with my mind. And most of the time some of our cats were in my room with me, and that really calmed me down. I moved away a few years ago and stopped thinking about it. About 4 months ago I went to visit my parents with my new boyfriend. We were sitting on my bed and suddenly something inside my head kinda cracked, and my ears started ringing and I felt dizzy. My brother's cat was there with us, and she got super restless, and my boyfriend freezes and starts staring at the end of my bed, and so did the cat. He grabbed my arm and said, "Honey, I don't want to scare you, but there's someone standing at the end of your bed." I couldn't see anything, and I got kind of freaked out, but at the same time I felt so sick and weird. I kinda knew already that something wasn't right. We sat there for a while, and then my boyfriend told me the man was gone. The next day, we went to our living room, which is on the 3rd floor. Through the scary door, I hadn't told him about my experience when I was a kid, but he felt super stiff when we were climbing the stairs, and went through the door. He later told me he saw a dark figure at the doorway. I got chills, and told him about my nightmare when I was a kid. He got creeped out too. A few months passed, and we're visiting my parents again. We were sitting in the kitchen on the 1st floor, and a butterfly flew through the window. My boyfriend smiled and said it's a sign of a soul moving on, and I just kinda hummed at it. The same day, the same butterfly had landed right next to the 3rd floor doorway. After that, I haven't felt anxious in my parents' house. And while the doorway still gives me the creeps, it's nothing as bad as it used to be. Has anyone had any similar experiences? I don't have much knowledge of this kind of stuff, so I'd just like to have opinions. What could all this be about? 3. This happened a few years ago, and this is one thing that baffles me and I've never been able to explain. The house I lived in was fairly old. I believe it was built in the 40s or something. I have to explain the layout of the house for the story to fully make sense. There was a small front room when you first walked into the house, kind of a foyer, kind of a sitting room. And it had an archway into the main section of the house. You could either turn right, and there was a mini hallway. On the end of the hallway was a computer room, the middle was a bathroom, and the other end, next to the front room, was my mum's room. Or you could half turn left and you'd be in the dining room and walking along the stairs. Our dining room led into the kitchen, and next to it was the living room, all open plan. The upstairs plan is irrelevant. It was the middle of the night. My brother was out of town, my mum was asleep, my dad was in the computer room with the door closed, and I was in the living room. As our house was old, you could hear everything. The stairs creaked. The doors stuck so often it made loud noises when they were opened. There were various loose floorboards, so you pretty much knew where everyone was at any time. I heard the front door open. Don't think anything of it. Figure either my brother is coming home or my dad is going out for something. I don't hear the door close or anything. Just open. Not something I realized at the time. I shrugged it off and went back to watching TV. I hear the computer room door open. My dad comes out and looks at me asking, "Did you go outside?" I'm like, no. I figured Carl was coming home or you were going out or something. He points out that he's been in the computer room for the past hour or so, despite the fact that I was in a place I can usually see if someone goes upstairs, and he should have been able to hear someone going upstairs from the computer room too. I decided to go up and see if my brother was home anyway. Nope. My mom's door is closed. Has been. And she's dead asleep anyway. Just to make sure, I decide to call my brother to make sure he didn't come home for like 2.7 seconds and then forget something. He confirms he's over an hour away. We just brush it off, talk for a few minutes, and decide to go out to CVS. We get ready to leave, and I stop as I get to the front door. It's locked. No one else has a key to our house. The only keys were my parents and my brother's. I was too young at the time to have a key, so there is no explaining away. Oh, maybe someone started to come in, thinking it was their house and realized it was the wrong one. As I said, my brother was out of town, and neither of us had heard the door close, so we can't even try to pass it off as a prank. My dad and I both heard the front door open from separate rooms with no explanation. Are you sure it wasn't a different door? No, every door in the house had a distinct sound, and the way it echoed had a specific way. Was it the door to a different house? 1, it was the middle of the night. 2, we lived in that house for 10 years. We've never heard our neighbors' doors. 3, it had no muffled sound like it was from anywhere else. Also, my dad has kind of shitty hearing. I've had no one who can explain this. If anyone has any ideas on how to debunk this, feel free. 4. I've been wanting to share this story for a while. For context, my family had to move to Eugene my freshman year of high school. We moved into this really nice, very new house on the south side of town. First few weeks there were pretty mellow and pretty good, but then I began to feel a really weird, really dark presence. I can't really describe it. I only ever saw her in my mind's eye. She was a young girl with long hair and a mangled face. All I could tell was that she was definitely a girl, died young, and either had taken some sort of liking to me or really didn't want me around. I'm still unsure of which. There were no real strange goings-on around the house. No lights ever flickered, no appliances ever acted strangely. Not even the animals acted weird. She had her full attention on me. I gave her a name, which I now know to be a bad idea. I won't repeat it or write it out in regards to her. I will, however, inform you that she shares a name with a particular My Chemical Romance song. Her presence lingered around me for a while. I got so terrified a couple nights I just didn't ever go to bed, or slept with the TV on. This continued from when I was 14 till roughly when I turned 16. Now, I was raised Christian for most of my childhood. Christian enough to where I went to a private middle school. My parents could use God as a parenting tool for morals and all that crap. Well, when I turned 16, I realized that the Bible was chock full of contradictions, and that a lot of Christian morals and values were complete bullshit. I quickly deconverted and became an atheist, later finding that I agreed mostly with the philosophy of Satanism as authored by Anton LaVey. As soon as I stopped being a Christian, this spirit stopped harassing me. I still felt like she was around sometimes, but I no longer felt threatened. It was more like having a roommate that I rarely saw. Eventually everything seemed to kind of stop, and by my 17th birthday I had all but forgotten about her. My senior year, my dad got a promotion, and he moved to New Mexico ahead of my mom. While she stayed with me in Eugene, my mom would hop back and forth from Oregon to New Mexico, spending off weeks there, basically. While she did this, I would often have my girlfriend, now fiancée, over, and would spend the night at my place doing teenagerly things. One night, while she was over, she realized she didn't have her phone. We had deduced that she may have dropped it on her way out of the car into the house. We went downstairs to look, and she made it halfway down the steps until she was like, "Can you go look for me?" Her expression was pretty freaked out. So I went, looked for it, couldn't find it, then came back upstairs. My fiancée is a witch, and she's been practicing for quite a while, so the fact that she was freaked out made me know that something was up. I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "You have a really bad energy in your house." I was shocked, and I didn't know what she was talking about, so I asked her if she saw anything, and she said she had. When I asked what, she replied, "A girl with long hair." I have since moved away from that house. I'm in a different city, and haven't been further bothered by this presence ever since. I'm still wondering what the deal was with it all, though. Anyone have any explanation for this? 5. This incident occurred during my time while I resided in my parents' second house, which they inherited from my grandfather, along the Route 1 in California. Though originally from the UK, I was raised on the East Coast. I had a serious relationship fallout end of last summer, and hence I decided to take some time off my routine and ran away to this secluded place all across the country. My parents' house is isolated with its own fencing perimeter around. The reason I had taken this break against the wishes of my parents was because I felt I really needed to get myself together, and the best way to do so was by isolating myself from people. During my time there, I used to wake up in the morning, make myself coffee, read a book, go for walks, and pretty much that was all that I did. I'd almost gone on a social media detox. I love sunsets, and so whenever I'm in California, I try to make the most of the beautiful sunsets. There was a place a few minutes' drive from the house that I used to visit while I was a kid and watch the beautiful sunsets. This house had become my evening routine after dinner. Sometimes I stayed after the twilight reading books, sometimes early, sometimes almost an hour after sunset. The time I left was determined by the emotions at the time. One evening I was driving back in the dark. That's when I realized a woman wearing white jackets walking along the road ahead. I switched on my high beams. I had a better look at her, but she kept on walking unruffled. I decided to pass her, slowly leaning my steering gradually towards the left, so that there would be a comfortable distance between my car and her, gradually passing her by. She kept walking along the street as if nothing just happened, and I could see in the reflections of my rear lights that she was quite old, maybe in her 70s or 80s. Soon I reached home, and the thought escaped my mind. The next day again, the same time, I was able to see her, and also the following day. Now I was pretty sure she must be a local, and she would be taking those evening walks. But what struck me as very strange is that the road has no streetlights, and it is very dangerous to walk along the road, especially at that time of day, since the speed limit for the road is set to 45 miles per hour, and it's pitch dark. No sane person was ever going to do that. However, one day while I was returning back, the thing that struck me like a bolt of thunder is that I would always see her at the same place. It was almost like the exact same place. That struck me as odd. But then the next day I decided to leave the place a bit early when the light from the sun was still setting, wondering if I could catch a glimpse of her during the day. Unfortunately, I did not find her presence that day, and that instantly dissolved my theory. But a couple of days later, I left the place almost 30 minutes past dark, since I had just got lost in the sounds of the waves splashing across those massive coastline rocks. While returning, I could see her again, and guess what? The exact same spot. The exact same sweater and that gentle walk along the road. Even though it was a different time, that actually creeped me out. I swear to God, that day, that moment, I was afraid. The dark never bothered me, and that place always felt safe to me, but the woman at that spot actually terrified me that day. I just went past her this time as fast as I could, never looking back. I parked my car inside the garage and made sure that I secured the lock on the perimeter, and as soon as I got home, bolted the doors and also checked if the security camera on the front porch was working fine. Only when things looked good to me, I felt a bit at ease. I informed my mom about it the next day, but her outlook toward it was expected, casual, and that I should not worry about it and make sure I get back home before it's actually dark. That is what I did ever since. The next afternoon I scanned the whole road via my car, wondering if there was any graveyard, or if somebody had passed away on that spot. But there was just nothing all along the road. I even did a web search to see if something happened on that street in the past, but was unable to find anything related to it. After that incident, I made sure I would get back home before sunset during my time. I never saw her again after that day. Eventually, within a few weeks, I returned back to the East Coast, and I forgot about it. I have not been to the house since the pandemic hit, but I really felt that I should share this story with the community. To end, I'm not saying that she was a ghost, but what freaks me out is that I have seriously no idea why I could see her at the exact same spot, several times with no houses in sight. Sometimes I wish I would have done a little more investigation, but I believe the circumstances in my life during that time ceased my efforts. However, I will update since the end of this coming September. I will be visiting the place, and I will definitely try to investigate a little further. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 203. And before I go any further, I'd just like to give a little shout out to the author of the final story there, Taylor Allison. Thank you very much for letting us use your story, Taylor. Okay, this goes up on Friday, and if all went well, Glitch should have been up yesterday. Okay, so probably a stream tomorrow night then. Likely a gaming stream of some kind, not sure what, we'll see. Could be more Alien Isolation. We might do No Man's Sky or maybe Jackbox or something. We'll figure it out as we go. And we'll see what we're in the mood for. Okay. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.